My name is Serena Calloway, and I am 36 years old. On Christmas Eve, my mother reached across the dinner table and slapped my 8-year-old daughter across the face in front of 11 people. Then she looked me dead in the eyes and said the words I had been quietly preparing for since the day I brought Lily home. She is not real family, Serena. She never will be. What my mother did not know, what none of them knew, was that 3 weeks earlier I had sat in an attorney's office on the 14th floor of a building downtown and signed documents that would change every single thing about what that family stood to inherit. She slapped my child at Christmas dinner. My lawyer had already been waiting. Before I take you into that dining room and everything that came after it, please hit subscribe if you're new here. Drop your city and the time where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one, and I love knowing where this is reaching. Now let me take you back to the beginning because you need to understand what kind of woman my mother is before you can understand what kind of woman I had to become. Millhaven, Indiana. Population about 6,000, give or take. 1 main street. 2 stoplights. A grain elevator on the edge of town that you could smell in August for 3 miles in any direction. That was where I grew up. My father, Gerald, ran the hardware store his own father had opened in 1971. Same green awning, same bell above the door, same smell of motor oil and sawdust every time you walked in. My mother, Patricia, taught 2nd grade at Millhaven Elementary for 22 years, which everyone in town thought made her a patient and nurturing woman. People who only knew her from school were always surprised when they met her at home. I was the oldest. Then came my brother Derek, 3 years younger, and then my sister Connie, 7 years younger than me, the one my mother called the baby even after Connie turned 31 and had 2 kids of her own. In our house, love was rationed the way you ration things when you are afraid there is not enough to go around. Derek got most of the patience. Connie got most of the softness. I got most of the responsibility. I set the table. I helped with homework. I managed the schedule when my parents went to church council meetings on Tuesday nights and left me in charge of a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old with a frozen pizza and a note on the counter. I did not say this with resentment. I say it so you understand the arithmetic. In our family, I was the competent one, the one who handled things, the one they came to when something needed to be sorted out. I had been doing that since I was 9 years old, and I did not stop until I was 36. Right up until Christmas Eve. I left Millhaven at 18 on a partial scholarship to Indiana University. Accounting major, business minor. I graduated in 3.5 years, started working for a mid-sized firm in Indianapolis, and by 28 I was a senior auditor, making more money than my parents had ever made combined. I lived in a clean apartment near downtown with a balcony and a coffee maker that I paid too much for and 0 regrets about it. I did not get married. I came close once, at 25, to a man named Thomas who turned out to have a completely different definition of honesty than I did. That ended in about 14 months, without much drama and without much grief. After Thomas, I was careful. I was good at my job. I had a few close friends, a therapist I saw once a month, and a very organized system for managing my finances that my colleagues at work thought was either impressive or obsessive depending on who you asked. At 32, I started thinking seriously about adopting. I had thought about it before, in a vague, untethered way, the way you think about things you want but have not yet given yourself permission to pursue. But at 32, I gave myself permission. I started doing the research. I attended information sessions. I connected with an agency. I filled out paperwork that was more detailed than my tax returns, and I answered questions that made me look at my own life in ways I never had before. What can you offer a child? I wrote 4 pages. The agency said most people wrote 1. Lily came home when she was 3 years old. She had a round face and 2 front teeth that were just barely starting to come in, and she smelled like baby shampoo and something sweet I could not name. Her social worker brought her to my apartment on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and when she walked through the door, she looked at my bookshelf for a long time, then she looked at me, then she pointed at the bookshelf and said, "Books." I said, "Yes. Do you like books?" She nodded very seriously. I said, "Me too." And that was it. That was the beginning. For the first year, we figured each other out the way two people do when they have decided to trust each other before they have fully earned it. She was cautious, then curious, then fully and entirely herself in a way that made my apartment feel like a home for the first time since I moved in. She had opinions about everything. About which color cup she wanted, about whether pancakes were better than waffles, about the specific order in which she liked her bedtime stories. She was funny and serious and quick, and she called me Mama before I expected her to, and I was not ready for how that word would land in the middle of my chest. I told my parents about Lily before the adoption was finalized. I called my mother on a Sunday evening and told her I was in the process of adopting a child, that the process was going well, and that I wanted them to know. My mother was quiet for 4 seconds. I counted. Then she said, "Serena, is that wise?
You are not married.
How is that fair to a child?" I told her I was doing everything the right way, that I had been approved, that the agency was confident, that I had the means and the stability and the genuine desire to be a good parent. My mother said, "I just hope you have thought about what this means for the family." My father got on the line and said, "That is wonderful news, Sari." He was the only one who ever called me that. "We will come see you both as soon as you are settled." He never came. She never let him. The first time I brought Lily to Millhaven, she was 4 years old. I had been telling her about Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Gerald for months, the way you tell a child about people they are about to meet, building warmth around unfamiliar names so they do not feel like strangers. Lily had drawn a picture for each of them on the drive down, coloring in the car with her tongue pressed to her upper lip, very focused. My mother opened the door and looked at Lily the way you look at a piece of furniture that has been placed in the wrong room. She said, "Oh, she is smaller than I expected." She did not crouch down. She did not say hello. She did not take the picture Lily held out with both hands, the one with the green house and the yellow flowers and 2 smiling people standing in front of it. Lily held it out for a full 6 seconds before she put it back down at her side. My father came from the kitchen and got down on one knee on the porch and said, "Well now, who is this?" And Lily told him her name, and he shook her hand very solemnly, which made her laugh. She gave him the drawing. He hung it on the refrigerator before we even came inside. My mother never mentioned the drawing. Over dinner that first visit, Patricia asked Derek and his wife about their house renovation. She asked Connie about her kids' swim team's schedule. She asked my father about an invoice from the hardware store supplier. She did not ask Lily a single question. She did not speak to her once in 2 hours at the table. In the car on the way home, Lily fell asleep before we reached the highway. And I drove the rest of the way in silence, thinking about the drawing on the refrigerator and the woman who had walked past it 3 times without looking. Over the next 4 years, the pattern was consistent. Every visit to Millhaven was a variation on the same theme. My father found his own way to Lily, quietly. He taught her how to identify different types of screws in the hardware store. He saved her the puzzle section from his Sunday newspaper because she loved puzzles. He called her his bonus grandkid when my mother was not in the room, and Lily called him Grandpa Gerald with an ease and a confidence that broke my heart a little every single time. My mother tolerated her. That is the exact word. Tolerated. She handed Lily a plate of food at meals without looking at her. She did not include her in family photos unless I positioned Lily myself. She answered Lily's questions with the minimum number of words possible. One Christmas, when Lily was 6, she bought gifts for Derek's 3 children and Connie's 2 children and handed them all out in the living room with commentary and delight, and then she handed Lily a small wrapped package without a bow. Inside was a coloring book. A generic coloring book with cartoon animals on the cover, the kind you find at a gas station checkout. Lily said thank you. She used her best manners. My mother said, "I was not sure what she would like." For years of knowing my daughter, and she did not know what she would like. I did not confront it then. I told myself it was generational. I told myself she would come around. I told myself Lily had my father, and she had me, and that was enough, and I almost believed it. The item I did not tell myself, the one I kept filing in the back of my mind behind everything else, was the thing Connie said to me in the kitchen that same Christmas, washing dishes, her voice low and matter-of-fact the way Connie gets when she is telling me something she has been sitting on. She said, "Mom told Mrs. Halverson at church that you have a ward." I turned off the water. Not a daughter, Connie said. A ward. She told people you took in a child as a ward. I dried my hands on a dish towel and stood there looking at the pattern on the kitchen tiles. How long has she been saying that? Connie looked at the floor. A while, Sari. I put the dish towel on the counter. I went and found Lily in the living room where she was working on a puzzle with my father, and I sat next to her and helped her find the edge pieces until dinner was ready, and I did not say another word about it that night. But I started keeping track. I want to be honest with you about something. I am not a dramatic person. I am a woman who reads balance sheets for a living. I am the person in the room who asks for the documentation before she forms an opinion. Drama costs energy I have always had better uses for. So when I say I started keeping track, I do not mean I was building towards some confrontation I had planned out in advance. I mean I am an auditor by training, and auditors do not ignore irregularities. They document them. They date them. They wait to see if a pattern holds. The pattern held. Item 1, October, Lily is 4. Family group text about Thanksgiving. Derek adds his wife and Connie adds her husband. I am not added. I find out about the dinner from my father, who texts me separately. 3 days before. Item 2, February, Lily is 5. My mother sends Valentine cards to Derek's kids and Connie's kids. Individual cards, each one addressed by name in my mother's handwriting. Nothing for Lily. Item 3, June, Lily is 6. School award ceremony. Lily wins the Math Achievement Award for her grade. I call home to share the news. My mother says, "That is nice, Serena." Then asks if I have talked to Derek about whether he is coming for the 4th of July. Item 4, November, Lily is 6. My mother is overheard by Connie's husband telling a neighbor that her oldest daughter chose a very unconventional path and that it was hard to explain to people. Item 5, December, Lily is 6. The gas station coloring book. By the time Lily was 7, I had 18 items. 18 documented instances, each one labeled, each one dated, each one saved in a folder on my laptop I had titled Family, Administrative, the same way I titled everything that needed to be kept without being looked at too often. And then I hired Margaret. Margaret Osei was a family and estate attorney with an office above a dry cleaner on Meridian Street and 17 years of experience and the particular quality of stillness that comes to people who have sat across from every variety of human situation and learned that very little requires alarm. She wore reading glasses on a chain, and she poured her own coffee, and she did not soften things for the sake of your comfort. I called her on a Thursday afternoon after a visit to Millhaven where my mother had introduced Lily to her book club friends as Serena's little project. Her little project. I sat in Margaret's office and I told her everything. The 18 items. The ward comment. The project comment. The photographs. The cards that did not come. I told her about Lily's picture of the greenhouse with the yellow flowers that my father hung on the refrigerator, and my mother walked past without looking. Margaret listened with her glasses off and her hands flat on the desk. When I finished, she said, "Tell me about your financial situation and your relationship with your parents' estate." I told her that my parents' house was paid off. The hardware store had been operating with a thin margin for years, and Gerald had taken out a line of credit against it twice. Their retirement account was modest. I knew the rough shape of their finances because I was the one they called when the numbers did not balance, which happened more than anyone in Millhaven would have guessed by looking at the green awning and the cheerful bell above the door. Margaret said, "And have you historically contributed to their financial stability?" I said that was probably one way to describe it. She said, "What is another way?" I said that for the past 6 years I had been quietly covering things. The line of credit payment twice. My father's knee surgery when their insurance denied the claim. A period of 3 months when the store's cash flow went negative and Gerald did not want to tell Patricia and called me at 7 in the morning sounding like a man standing at the edge of something steep. Margaret said, "And they know this?" My father knew. My mother knew the outcomes. She did not always know the source. Margaret took off her glasses and set them on the desk. She said, "Here is what I want to talk to you about." We talked for 2 hours. When I left her office, the sun had gone down, and the dry cleaner below was locked and dark, and I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while before I drove home. I was not angry. I was something cleaner than angry. I was decided. Lily turned 8 in September. We had a small party at the apartment, 6 kids from her class and 2 of her best friends from the neighborhood, and a cake she had designed herself. Chocolate with pink frosting and a constellation of stars across the top because she had been deeply interested in astronomy since spring. She could name 17 constellations. She kept a notebook where she mapped the ones she had spotted from our balcony at night. I had invited my parents. My father said he would try. My mother said they had a prior commitment, which I understood to mean she had found a prior commitment once she saw the invitation. My father sent a card. It arrived 2 days late in his handwriting with a crisp $20 bill folded inside, and a note that said, "Love you, bonus kid. Grandpa Gerald." Lily put it on her bulletin board next to the constellation map. 3 weeks after the birthday party, I went back to Margaret's office and I signed the documents she had prepared. I had already updated my will the year before when I first retained her, naming Lily as sole beneficiary of everything I had. The new documents went further. They formalized what Margaret and I had discussed over several meetings, the documentation of my contributions to my parents' finances, the structure going forward, the terms under which those contributions would or would not continue, and a letter, carefully written and legally reviewed, that I gave Margaret to hold. She asked me when I wanted to use it. I said I would know. She said she believed me. I drove home and made dinner and helped Lily with her homework, long division, which she hated and I loved, and after she was in bed I sat on the balcony and looked at the city for a while and felt the particular quiet of a decision already made. Christmas Eve this year fell on a Monday. I drove to Millhaven with Lily in the passenger seat in her holiday dress, green velvet, her choice, with her hair in 2 braids she had asked me to do twice because the first time was not symmetrical enough. She had made ornaments for everyone, painted clay, each one different, each one thought about. A fishing hook for Grandpa Gerald because he liked to fish. A little red schoolhouse for Grandma Patricia because she had been a teacher. Tiny, careful paintings, sealed with glaze, wrapped in tissue paper in a shoebox on the back seat. She carried that shoebox up the porch, steps herself. My father opened the door and said, "There she is," and Lily handed him his ornament first. He held it up to the porch light and said it was the finest fishing hook he had ever seen, and Lily beamed. Inside, Derek and his wife and their 3 kids. Connie and her husband and her 2 kids. My mother in the kitchen in a Christmas sweater, moving dishes from counter to stove with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had hosted this dinner for 30 years. Lily took her shoebox to the living room and distributed the ornaments herself. Derek's kids crowded around. They were good kids. They liked Lily. Kids always liked Lily. She was easy to like. She showed them how the glaze worked, how she had painted the detail with a very small brush. My mother came to the doorway and watched for a moment. Then she went back to the kitchen. Lily held up the red schoolhouse ornament. She walked to the kitchen doorway. She said, "Grandma Patricia, I made this for you." My mother looked at it. She said, "Put it on the table with the others." Lily put it on the table. She came and stood next to me and did not say anything about it, and my chest did the specific thing it does when my daughter absorbs something that should not be hers to absorb. She was 8 years old. She was standing in a room with a shoebox full of things she had made for people who loved her with varying degrees of effort, and she was being gracious about it. That is a thing a child should not have to be taught at 8. Gracious about whether she is loved. Dinner was set at 6. We sat down, all 11 of us, around the table my parents had bought at an estate sale in 1989, the one with the leaf in the middle that Gerald put in every holiday. The food was good. My mother was a capable cook regardless of everything else. Candles in the center, good plates, cloth napkins she ironed herself. Lily sat between me and my father. She ate her roll and asked Gerald a question about what kind of fish he had caught most recently, and he answered with enthusiasm, and she listened with her chin in her hand the way she does when she is genuinely interested. The conversation moved around the table. Derek's renovation, Connie's kids' activities. My mother asked me about work and I answered briefly, and she moved on. She asked Connie's husband about his brother's business. She asked Derek's wife about her mother's health. She circled the table the way she always did, a woman conducting her own dinner, and she came to Lily not at all. Lily reached across me for the bread basket, She knocked over her water glass. Not hard, a small tip, the kind that happens when arms are short and tables are full. Water spread across the tablecloth and onto the edge of Gerald's plate, and a few drops landed on Connie's sleeve. A small accident. The kind that happens at every family dinner in the country. My mother moved before I did. She reached across the corner of the table and slapped Lily's hand. Not with full force, but hard enough that the sound of it was in the room before any of us understood what we were hearing. Hard enough that Lily's head came up and her eyes went wide and her mouth opened in the specific shape of a child who has not yet decided whether to cry. The table went silent. My mother looked at Lily, and she said it, flat and certain, the way people say things they have thought and never said before and have finally run out of patience to keep inside. You need to be more careful. You are a guest in this house, not family.
Then she looked at me.
She is not real family, Serena. I have tried, but she is not. You made a choice, and this is what it looks like at my table. Lily was looking at her hand. My father said, Patricia. Just her name. Not another word after it. The table waited. I had gone somewhere very still inside. The kind of still that is not calm, not exactly, but is its own form of clarity. The kind that comes when a thing you have been bracing for finally arrives, and the bracing is over and all that is left is what you do. I looked at my mother. I looked at my daughter. And I made a decision that was not impulsive and not emotional and not made in this moment at all. This decision had been made 3 weeks earlier in Margaret's office above the dry cleaner on Meridian Street when I signed documents I told my mother nothing about. I said, Lily, put your coat on, please. Lily looked at me. She nodded. She got down from her chair. She went to the hallway and got her coat off the hook without being asked twice. I stood up. My mother said, Serena, do not make a scene. I said, I am not making a scene, Mom. I am leaving. There is a difference. Derek said, come on, Sari, she did not mean it that way. I looked at him. He looked away. I said, she slapped my daughter. She told my daughter, she is not real family. She said those words at her own table in front of her grandchildren and her children and her husband. I picked up my napkin and set it down beside my plate. There is no other way to mean that. My father stood up. He said, I will walk you out. My mother said, Gerald. He looked at her for a long time. Then he walked to the hallway and helped Lily with the second button on her coat because her fingers were probably shaking. On the porch, in the cold, with the Christmas lights on the neighbors' houses casting everything in red and green and soft white, my father crouched down in front of Lily and put his hands on her shoulders. He said, You're the finest bonus grandkid I ever had, and that means the world to this old man. You understand me? Lily nodded. He said, I am sorry about tonight. She hugged him. One arm because he was crouching and she was 8, and she pressed her face into his shoulder, and he closed his eyes. He stood up.
He looked at me.
I said, I will call you.
He said, I know.
I put Lily in the car, and I drove out of Millhaven on the county road with the grain elevator disappearing in the rearview mirror and Lily's green velvet dress reflecting the dashboard light, and the shoebox still on the back seat with the tissue paper still neat around the one ornament my mother had told her to put on a table. 2 hours into the drive, when Lily was asleep in the passenger seat and the highway was empty and dark and quiet, I called Margaret's cell. She picked up on the third ring. I said, tonight. She said, I will have the letter ready Monday morning. Here is what my parents did not know. What I mean when I say they did not know is that the information existed and was available and they had simply never bothered to find out. In the 6 years I had been quietly managing their financial gaps, I had contributed just under $94,000 to their stability. 41 of it was documented in writing, because I had learned from my professional life that you document things. Bank transfers with notes. A letter when Gerald could not make the store's line of credit payment, and I made it instead. Receipts from the medical billing office the day I walked in and settled my father's knee surgery balance in cash. I am an auditor. I keep records the way some people keep photographs. Margaret had reviewed all of it. She had assessed it. And the letter she held was addressed to my parents and to Derek, because Derek was the one my mother had put in charge of understanding what she called the family's arrangements, a phrase I now understood in its full shape. The letter laid out the history. Every contribution, dated and documented. Every instance of financial assistance rendered without acknowledgement or gratitude or condition. It noted the total. It noted the context in which those contributions had been made, my daughter being described as a ward, a project, a guest, not real family. It noted that effective immediately I would not be contributing further, and that I wished them well, and that I considered my obligations to my parents' financial situation fully concluded. It also noted, carefully, that I had retained copies of all documentation and that any legal questions about the nature of those contributions should be directed to Margaret. Not because I expected a legal fight, but because I am an auditor and I had learned from every audit I had ever done that the most important time to have documentation is when someone decides to claim the facts are different than they are. Margaret sent the letter on Monday. She sent it certified mail, with signature required. I did not call first. I did not warn them. The letter was the conversation. My phone started ringing Tuesday morning at 7:42. My mother, then Derek, then my mother again, then a number I did not recognize that turned out to be Derek calling from his office line because I had not picked up from his cell. I let them all go to voicemail. The voicemails told a story in sequence. My mother's first message was 22 seconds of silence, and then her voice, controlled and cold. Serena, call me back. Whatever Margaret Osei sent us is full of inaccuracies and you need to talk to us. Derek's first message was careful.
Hey, Sadie.
Look, I know last night was rough. Mom overreacted. Everyone agrees. Can we just talk before this goes any further? My mother's second message was 3 minutes long, and I will summarize it by saying it covered the territory of everything she had done for me across 36 years in a tone that expected the inventory to create a debt. Derek's office line message said he had talked to a friend who did some family law and that the letter raised some questions, and he would appreciate a conversation. I listened to all 4 voicemails while I made Lily's breakfast. Oatmeal with brown sugar and sliced banana the way she liked it. She came to the kitchen table in her pajamas with her astronomy notebook and told me about the constellation she had found from the balcony the night before. She had circled it in pencil, careful and precise. I listened to her describe it. I asked questions. I poured her orange juice. I did not return the calls that morning. My father called Wednesday afternoon. Not the house line. His cell. The one he used when he was in the truck alone, and wanted to say something he could not say in the kitchen. I picked up. He said, "Sari." I said, "Hi, Dad." A long pause. I heard him breathing. I heard what might have been the truck's turn signal. He said, "I should have said something Monday night. I should have said something a long time ago." I said, "I know, Dad." He said, "She is wrong about Lily. You know I know that." I said, "I do know that." He said, "I am not asking you to take anything back. I know that letter means what it means, and I am not going to pretend otherwise." He paused again. "I just want you to know I am sorry. Not because of the money. Because she is my grandkid, and I should have stood up and said, so every time your mother acted like she was not. My throat did the specific thing it does when I do not want to cry, and the situation is not responding to that preference. I said, she asked about you the whole drive home, Dad. She wanted to know if you were okay." He made a sound that was not quite a word. I said, "I am not cutting you out, but I need you to understand that I cannot bring her somewhere she gets treated like a guest in the family she belongs to. I will not do that to her." He said, "I understand." I said, "Call her sometime. Call her just to call her. Not when something has happened. Just on a Tuesday because you thought about her." He said, "I can do that." We talked for a while after that, about the hardware store and about a puzzle Lily had asked him about, and about the fishing hook ornament he had hung on their tree before any of this happened. He told me it was still there. He told me he planned to keep it there. Derek called again on Thursday. This time I answered. He said he needed to understand the letter and what it meant going forward. He used the word estate once and I let him say it, and then I let the silence after it sit there. I said, "Derek, do you remember when Mom told her book club I had a ward?" He said, "That is not relevant." I said, "Do you remember when Lily handed your mother a Christmas ornament she made herself and Patricia told her to put it on the table with the others?" He said, "Sari, we're talking about." I said, "I am talking about my daughter. I am always talking about my daughter." Every time I came to that table and watched your mother look through Lily, like she was something inconvenient, I was also talking about my daughter. The letter is the only part of this conversation your family has paid any attention to. Derek was quiet. I said, she slapped her, Derek. She is 8 years old. He said, Mom has always been. I said, I know what Mom has always been. I have known longer than anyone. But she put her hand on my child and told her she was not real family, and I am done managing that. He did not have an answer for that. I said, I wish you well, Derek. I do. Tell your kids Lily says hi. I ended the call. My mother called one more time, a week after the letter. A week of silence on her end, and then her number on my screen on a Sunday evening while Lily was in the bath. I picked up. She said, I want to understand what you think you are accomplishing. I said, I am not accomplishing anything, Mom. I already accomplished it. She said the letter had upset my father terribly. She said it had embarrassed the family. She said that Margaret Osei had called the hardware store twice, and that was inappropriate, and I said Margaret had called to confirm the letter was received as required, and that had nothing to do with inappropriate. She said, after everything I have done for you, Serena. I said, you raised me, Mom. I am grateful for that. But you put your hand on my daughter and told her she is not real family, and you have been telling everyone in Millhaven the same thing in different words for 4 years, and I have been watching it and writing it down, and I am done pretending it is not what it is. She said, she is not biologically. I said, she is mine. That is the only biology that matters. She said, you are being very dramatic. I said, I am being very accurate. Those are not the same thing. She said, where does this leave us? I said, wherever you are willing to start with an apology. Not to me, to her. She is 8 years old, and she made you a Christmas ornament, and you slapped her hand and told her she was not real family. That is where we are. And the road back from that starts with her, not me. Silence. She said, you always were the difficult one.
I said, goodbye, Mom.
Here is what happened after. My parents' financial situation came into focus over the following 2 months in the way that things come into focus when a light you have been providing suddenly turns off. Gerald called me in February not about the money. He would not do that. He is too proud and too honest for that, but I heard it in the background of the call. I heard the specific tone of a man recalculating. Derek called once more in March, and the conversation was different from the last one. Quieter. He asked if there was anything he could do. I told him he could treat Lily like his niece the next time he saw her. He said he would. He said he thought he probably had not done that well enough. I said I appreciated him saying so. Connie came to Indianapolis in April. Just her, without her husband, on a Saturday. She brought coffee and she sat on my balcony and she said, I did not say anything Monday night, and I should have. She said Lily was her niece, and she was sorry it had taken her this long to say it plainly. Lily was in the living room doing a puzzle. I called her out and she came to the balcony and Connie said, I heard you make ornaments. And Lily looked at me and then back at Connie and said, do you want me to teach you? Connie said yes. They spent an hour at the kitchen table with clay and paint while I watched from the doorway. It was not everything, but it was something real. Something that did not need to be managed or documented or kept in a folder. My father calls Lily on Tuesdays now. Not because anything has happened, just on Tuesdays. He calls her his bonus grandkid the way he always has, and she tells him about whatever constellation she found that week. Last Tuesday, she told him about Orion, and he listened to the whole explanation, and then told her about a time he drove a truck overnight as a young man and watched Orion move across the windshield for 4 hours, and she said that sounded like the best thing she had ever heard. He agreed that it was. The fishing hook ornament is still on their tree. He told me it will be there next year. My mother has not called since April. I have not called her. The door on that side is not locked, but it does not open for my end.
Not yet.
Not until there is something real on the other side of it. Margaret's letter cost my parents $94,000 in future contributions they had come to rely on and did not know how to name. It cost my mother a story she had been telling about herself for a decade. It cost her the image of a devoted grandmother in a small town where everyone now knows at least the shape of what happened, because that is what small towns do with the shapes of things. It cost me the hope that I had been holding since Millhaven, the one where if I was patient enough and generous enough and competent enough, my mother would eventually see my daughter for who she is. I gave that hope up on Christmas Eve in a dining room with 11 people and a water glass and a hand that came across the table before I understood what was happening. Some things you hold a long time before you understand they were never going to become what you needed them to be. What 4 years of documentation and one night at a Christmas table taught me is this. Being the competent one is not the same as being valued. Being the one people call is not the same as being the one they show up for. I managed my parents' finances for 6 years, and my mother introduced my daughter as a ward to her book club friends and told 11 people at Christmas dinner that Lily was not real family, and both of those things were true at the same time. The accounting was always off. I just had not been willing to run the actual numbers. Margaret's letter was not revenge. I want to be clear about that because clarity matters more to me than drama. Margaret's letter was a balance sheet. An accurate one. A record of what had been given and what had been returned, and the terms on which I was no longer willing to continue. My daughter made 8 ornaments for 8 people. She carried them in a shoebox down a porch in a green velvet dress. She handed them out one by one, and she was gracious and warm and careful, and then she knocked over a water glass the way 8-year-olds do, and someone put a hand on her and told her she was a guest. She is not a guest. She is mine. And the moment my mother said otherwise in front of 11 people was the moment I stopped managing and started accounting. The math was simple. It just took me 4 years to be willing to do it. That is my story. $94,000. For years of items in a folder. 1 attorney on Meridian Street. 1 letter certified mail. And a little girl who still keeps that fishing hook ornament drawing on her bulletin board next to her constellation map. If you have ever been the one who keeps showing up for people who would not do the same for yours, I need to hear from you. Leave it in the comments. I read them all. And if this story reminded you that your child's belonging is non-negotiable, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Hit subscribe if you have not yet. I will see you in the next one.